Welcome back to Florida's Fourth Estate, everyone, and thank you so much for staying with us. Today we are talking about mental health, something that really gets pushed aside and dismissed a lot, but it is one of the most important things we can deal with right now and talk about and be honest about right now.
It really is. And in a lot of cases, it's not who you would expect. You sometimes you look at somebody and you think, man, they have it all together. Take celebrities, for instance,
Mhm.
and you're like, man, this person must have just the greatest life. And one person we brought on today is someone you would expect to just have everything all together all the time.
Picture perfect.
Yeah, totally. And you can see it just by looking at her. This is
And
Mikaila
look,
Nichols.
there's a perfect picture.
Right. Yes. She is a mental health advocate and she's the founder of Blatantly Honest. She has sort of dedicated her life now to mental health and helping kids who are struggling with bullying and mental health issues. And Mikaila, first off, welcome to the show. So glad to have you.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
Yeah.
And people, look at all of us and think like, oh yeah, everything's just easy all the time. And that's
You
just not the
surely
case
have
for,
no problems.
for any human being.
Right.
So start us off, Mikaila, by telling us like when struggles started for you.
I mean, I feel like struggles have always kind of been present, and I don't like really saying that, but I mean, there's days where we all have good days, we all have bad days, but really for me, I experienced a lot of bullying when I was younger. Middle school was awful for me. That's really when it kind of started, and honestly, I'd be lying if I said like I don't get bullied to this day, but I still do. It's just a matter of learning to process it and how you respond.
Yeah, and you've had to respond for a very long time because I've heard from so many parents that middle school is like such a tough year, and especially for girls. Why do you think that is such an awful time?
I mean, middle school's hard. There's so many changes that we're going through. We're kind of figuring out who we are, and I think everyone's just trying to figure out what they want, who they want to be, who their friends are. So when you're kind of climbing that ladder of popularity stuff, you try to push other people down because that's what people think you should do when ultimately it's not what you should do. And girls can be sometimes the worst, honestly, because I mean, Ginger, I'm sure you can relate, like we use like emotional warfare almost
Yeah.
against other women, and sometimes we can be the worst to one another, unfortunately.
Girl, it is awful because we know all the secrets, so we know the
Hmm.
buttons to push, right? And so, can you give us an idea of what that looked like for you as a young woman when people are bullying you and mean to you, and you look a certain way, so no one's going to feel sorry for you, right?
Yeah, for me, I mean, people look at me and, when I go and speak in a school, Ginger, and first thing I do is like, all right, like shout the stereotypes at me. Like, what does this chick know about bullying? What does she know about feeling different or feeling weird or not pretty? I mean, no one knows. I feel like we all have a mask on all the time. And like for
Mm.
me, like I seem like this really extroverted person, but sometimes I'm like an introverted extrovert, and people would never assume that. So really, I mean, for me personally, it was just trying to fit in at all times. And being a woman, it's how do you feel confident in your skin? And I mean, sometimes even now I lack confidence, but it's about taking ownership back of your life and really just kind of channeling who you are and not letting other people influence that.
Yeah, I could tell you from raising girls, two of them have been through middle school. I tell every parent I come across who has a baby who's a girl, I'm like, look, enjoy it now because middle school things get weird. Kids are awful. They don't know who they are and they just try to project all of their insecurities onto these other kids. And then you got to try to raise your kids not to do the same thing to these other kids. So it's a really hard, complicated time. So tell me, like, was there one bully who was really, you don't have to name them because
Dang it.
we're
I
you don't
want a
have to say
name.
who they are. I want
I
names and we're
want a
going to
name.
find them. Now, if you'll tell us a name, I'll take a name because I'm going to dad out here. But if not, just tell us a scenario. Like, because I don't, I think people are watching this and they're like, I don't know, maybe she's being dramatic. Like, give us a scenario of what happened to you in middle school that really kind of shaped you.
Lunch for me was horrible. Like
Mm.
I vividly remember being the kid like that. I would be so excited to go eat lunch because I could like talk to people and maybe make a friend. And I like remember people would literally like get up and move. One time I sat down and, I started my career in modeling when I was a young kid. And so I ate like, weird foods, so to speak, that models and whatever had to eat. But I remember this one kid like crumpled up her chips and like dumped it on my head. And she's like, well, since you won't eat chips, like you can wear them. And I remember just like feeling like
Oh,
traumatized. And
jeez.
so it was awful. And it's like, how do you express that to your parents? Because you don't want to tell them because they'd be heartbroken, obviously. And then I would literally have lunch every day from there on with my Latin teacher.
Oh.
And she's still one of my best friends. Like I would eat in the teacher's classroom because I was so uncomfortable at lunch.
Oh my God. Okay, this incenses me to no end. And it's such a sad thing that has to happen to you. And knowing that it happened to you, we also know that it happens over and over again. That is played out in lunchrooms and schools all across Florida, this country,
Mhm.
actually. What gave you the courage to say, okay, and the strength to say, all right, something has to change?
You know, what a great question. There's a movie I used to watch as a kid. It was Rudolph, and there's like an island of misfit toys, and I remember being like the queen of the misfits because I would go and hang out with the kids who, maybe they were rejected or they felt a little bit different. Like I remember just looking for people who felt a little different, just like I did, and hanging out with them and being like, I don't care what these popular kids have to say about me or what I'm doing because it was it literally became like me, and not to say me against them, but I was like, I'm not going to allow them the satisfaction of, ruining my day. So I'm going to find people who appreciate me and other people who need love and acceptance just like I need right now. And I'm going to go with that
Mhm.
and choose, kindness instead of like out of spite,
Yeah, but
Where
it
did
did
that
see.
come from? Sorry, Matt.
No, you go.
It came from, I don't know where, honestly. I think it was like an internal thing where I was just like, okay, yeah, I can be mean back, right? And sometimes you want to be mean back. Like, I'm not sitting here like being like, oh, be nice all the time. Like, there's moments, but you have to be like, okay, do I want to stoop down to their level? And that was something I could not wrap my head around. I was like, I refuse to be like them. And that's why I chose to really reach out to people who needed help. And I think that's kind of been like the pivotal moment in my entire life.
You said something a little earlier that touched me as a parent. You said I couldn't tell my parents this because well, it's just going to hurt their feelings more. What do you think your
Mhm.
parents could have done or said? Because as a dad, my goal is for my girls to tell me everything, even the things that I'm uncomfortable with. If they tell me, I try
Mhm.
to just be like, okay, sure, yeah, that's all right, that's normal. So what could your parents have done, if anything, to make it to where you would have felt more comfortable sharing your struggles with them during this time?
I'm so fortunate to have, two amazing parents who are literally my
Mhm.
best friends. And I wish I would have told them sooner because I don't know, I felt like I was doing something wrong on my end. That's why I didn't want to tell them. And really, like Matt, like you said, like you want to have those honest conversations with your kids. Like I tell my parents everything. And sometimes I tell them way too much. At 25, I'm like, hey guys, like, guess what happened? And they're like, oh my gosh, like Matt, stop. But really just they couldn't have done anything differently. They once they figured out what was going on, they're like, okay, can we intervene? Can we go talk to their parents? I was like, no, that might make it worse. But really just, telling your kid that everything's going to be okay and being an open ear and really allowing them to be honest, even though, sometimes, and I'm not a parent yet, but one day I want to have those honest relationships and conversation with my kid because they need you
Yeah.
desperately. And if someone doesn't have a parent, a guardian or someone, like someone, you need to tell them, because one of my biggest regrets was not telling them sooner.
Mikaila, I want to get to exactly what you're doing now. So, tell us about the blatantly honest, and you're an author of books. What are you doing now to try to help kids who are in the similar situation that you were?
We're doing a lot of things in the Central Florida community. So the Blatantly Honest Foundation, it's a 501c3. We're really kind of here to I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel when it comes to bullying. Unfortunately, that will always be there. But, the cool thing about the foundation is since I am young, I'm 25, right? I can go and speak to these kids and kind of talk to them like their big sister would. And it's not like mom or dad are talking at you. It's like, okay, hey, let's talk about mental health. Let's talk about bullying. Let's talk about body image in a way that I'm able to get through to them, but also like encourage them to go and, seek therapy or talk to their parents or teachers. So really, I spend a lot of time in schools. I have a podcast
Mhm.
series where I interview like different celebrities and really talk about their own stories, because ultimately I want to help encourage a conversation and let them know that they're not alone. Because I think the hardest part of dealing with these things is feeling like, the world's against me. And truthfully, it's not. And a lot of other people experience these things. So we have that. We have coloring books, my regular book, Blatantly Honest, just trying to provide resources in a way that's a little bit different and geared toward, like, your big sister's talking at you and with you.
You are wise beyond your years. Check her out, Blatantly Honest. She is the founder, and she is just so wise for a 25-year-old. Thank you for joining us on Florida's Fourth Estate.
And thank you for watching Florida's Fourth Estate. You can download it from wherever you listen to podcasts or watch anytime on News 6 Plus.